I'm Susan, and I'm studying to become a high school English teacher. But going to college in the United States is incredibly expensive, and I'm already $40,000 in debt. On a teacher salary, it's gonna take forever to pay it off. But luckily, I found a really weird job. I'm supposed to meet up with guys and just talk to them. Sometimes it's like a date, but mostly it's all about having an interesting conversation or going to the opera together. And no, I'm not going home with the guy afterward. It's just a date. Even though some guys want me to pretend that I'm their girlfriend and they expect me to laugh at their jokes, like I was completely in love with them. But recently, I met this one guy who wanted to see me every single weekend. And I decided to do a bit of cyberstalking. That's when I found out that he was married with 3 kids. Now I was seriously confused, and I wasn't sure if he was cheating with me on his wife. I mean, we were only talking to each other and eating at fine restaurants, but it kind of felt wrong. So the next time we saw each other, I asked him if his wife knew about us. He explained that he and his wife had fallen out of love a long time ago, and that they only stayed together for their kids. I wasn't sure if I believed him, but then he asked me if I wanted to go on a trip with him to Paris. For some reason, that really creeped me out. Flying with a stranger to a different continent? No way. That's why I decided to not go on any more dates with him. Don't get me wrong, he was a nice guy, and he even worked as a doctor at a hospital, but he was also 35 years older than me, so no thank you. I know I have a really weird job, but it's not as bad as it sounds, even though I wouldn't recommend it to anyone, because it could definitely happen that you meet some weirdo that will stalk you afterward. But so far, I was lucky, and didn't have any bad experiences. It's just that I'm completely broke, and if I worked at Starbucks 8 hours a day, I would barely even make enough money to pay for rent. And how shall I find time to study while working a full-time job? A couple of my college friends even have to live in their cars because they can't afford to pay rent. They say it's really uncomfortable at night, and they're always worried that someone will smash their window and steal their stuff. I don't want to live like that. It's much easier for me to go on a fake date with some old guy, especially because the agency I work with always does a background check on the men I meet, which means that I don't have to be worried about meeting a criminal. The men I date sometimes pay me up to $200 just to talk to me for a few hours. I guess they really like me because I'm well-read and educated. I can talk about almost any topic, from politics to history. But of course, I haven't told my parents about my job. They are very conservative and super judgmental. If my dad found out I was going on dates with older men, he would probably disown me, or worse. He already thinks I'm a disappointment because I decided to become a high school teacher instead of a doctor. He says my kids will someday grow up in poverty and it's all my fault. But he isn't the perfect guy he thinks he is, because after he inherited $300,000 from his dad, he lost it all in a big investment scam. He wanted to become rich fast, and now he's as broke as before. And with those $300,000 he lost, I could have easily paid for my college tuition. But, instead, I have to work as a fake girlfriend and go on dates with 60-year-old men. I mean, please don't think that this is my dream job. I would much rather chill at home or go out with some of my friends. But I can't do that because my dad has never learned how to manage his money. All he can do is criticize his daughter for not being ambitious enough. Just thinking about my dad makes me angry. Maybe I'll send him a photo of me with some old guy that I'm on a date with, and then write into the caption, "My new boyfriend." I know that it would drive him crazy, and he definitely deserves it, because last year, he and my mom divorced after she caught him having an affair with their maid. I couldn't believe it at first, because my dad had always preached about the sacred bond of marriage. The older I get, the more I realize that my dad is a complete hypocrite. He always forced us to go to church each Sunday. But now I realize that he never actually practiced what he preached. I wish I could simply stop caring about what my dad thinks of me. But it's not that easy. For some reason, I still think about him all the time, and I still want to make him proud.
Hey, I'm Lisa, and I always thought I had the perfect life. I was the valedictorian of my high school. I was in a long-term relationship with my boyfriend Ben, and I was about to graduate from Harvard Law School. But one day, I heard a notification on Ben's phone. He'd just left to go to a lecture and must have forgotten it. When I picked it up, I noticed that he had a WhatsApp message from a girl called Melanie. He had never mentioned her, so I started reading through their conversation and saw that they had been chatting for weeks. My stomach churned as I read their conversation. They were seriously flirting. I felt even worse when I saw Melanie ask him, "Did you get yourself checked?" My boyfriend Ben replied, "I went to the doctor today and he gave me the all clear." What the hell does that mean? When Ben came back from his lecture, I immediately confronted him. "I've read your conversation with Melanie," I told him. "What's going on? Are you cheating on me?" But instead of answering me, he got mad. "I thought you said you'd never go through my phone," he said. "Didn't you say relationships are built on trust?" Wow, I couldn't believe it. He was trying to turn this whole thing on me. "How can I trust you?" I said. "You've been flirting with another girl. Have you slept with her?" "Of course not," Ben replied. "You know you're the only girl I want." "So why were you chatting with her?" I asked. "We're partners on a college project," Ben explained. "There's nothing going on between us." He gave me a big hug and I felt a little better, but I couldn't ignore the fact that they had been flirting on WhatsApp for weeks. And they hadn't talked about any college project either. Things were a bit weird for the next couple of days because I couldn't stop thinking about what I'd read. In the end, I decided to find out the truth. So when Ben took a shower, I grabbed his phone and wrote Melanie a message, which said, "Want to come over to my place? My girlfriend has gone away with her parents, so we can study here without distractions." She immediately wrote back, "Sounds great. What's your address?" Not long after, she arrived at our apartment wearing a very sexy dress and bright red lipstick. There was no way she'd come to study. I mean, she didn't even have a laptop or books with her. When I opened the door, she looked shocked to see me, and I called out to Ben, "You've got a visitor!" When my boyfriend Ben saw Melanie in our apartment, he looked shocked too, and couldn't bring a word out of his mouth. Next, I turned to Melanie and asked her if she always dressed like a hooker when she met up with my boyfriend. And then she said, "Now I know why your boyfriend wants to spend so much time with me. He can't stand you because you are an annoying bitch." Wow, I was about to explode, but I kept my cool and simply smashed the door into her face. Afterwards, Ben immediately apologized to me about what happened, saying Melanie had been obsessed with him and that he didn't know how to keep her at distance. But I know what I read. My boyfriend had been flirting with Melanie for weeks. We're still together, but I can't really trust him anymore. He tried to hide their chat, and when I asked him what Melanie meant about getting checked at the doctor's, he said he'd just been feeling sick that day. But I don't believe him. It sounds to me like he'd been tested for an STD. Anyways, thank you for listening to my story. I'd love to know what you think I should do. Should I break up with Ben or stay with him? Hey, I'm Jessica, and 3 weeks ago my dad told me he had found a new girlfriend named Jenny. I was so excited for him because after my parents' divorce, he was really depressed, so it was about time he moved on and found new happiness. But then he dropped a huge bombshell. He said Jenny was moving in with us because she couldn't afford to pay rent while she was going to college. My jaw dropped. What? College? I asked my dad how old Jenny was. He said 21. 21? I'm 23. What kind of dad wants to date a girl younger than his own daughter? I was so creeped out, but I didn't say anything. I mean, who am I to tell my dad how he should live his life? The next day, Jenny arrived at our home with a big suitcase. My dad opened the door and they immediately started kissing. It was so gross I had to look away because Jenny had her hands on my dad's ass. Ugh. After they had finished, Jenny took a look at her home and said, "Yeah, I guess it's okay for now." Wow, what a bitch. And the next day while eating dinner, she told me, "I'm so glad your dad takes care of me. I could never have a job while going to school. College is really hard, you know." Ugh, jeez. This made me angry because when I went to college, my dad made me get a part-time job because he insisted I pay him rent. He said it was character building. I never complained because I knew my dad had lots of debt and I wanted to make things easier for him. But then Jenny started talking about how my dad bought her a new $15,000 car. And that's when I lost all respect for my dad. Couldn't he see that she was only using him for his money? She was rude, self-absorbed, and selfish. I wish my dad would see what she was really like and leave her, but it soon became clear that she was going to stay. For example, she's always asking my dad to take her to Hawaii. She talks about how it's the most beautiful island in the world and it would be really romantic, but I know she only wants to take pictures for her Instagram. Then there was the time she wore my shirt. I wanted to slap her, but I managed to stay polite. I told her, "That's my shirt. Wear it today if you would like, but I need it back, and please wash it first. I'd really appreciate it." But she just laughed and said, "This old rag? I should have guessed it was yours. Your dad would never buy me something so cheap." Ugh! She hates me just as much as I hate her. And I'm pretty certain she uses my body lotion and shampoo too. The really nice, expensive stuff I order online. She behaves as if my dad's apartment is hers. And maybe it is. I mean, why am I still living here anyway? My job pays me enough to get my own place, and my dad doesn't have time for me anymore. So maybe I'm just the annoying adult daughter who won't move out of her dad's home. Maybe Jenny would be nicer if I wasn't living here anymore. Well, that's why I'm searching for my own apartment now. The thought of living on my own was scary at first, but I asked my best friend to move in with me. She said yes, and we're planning to have lots of cool movie nights, and we might even go on some double dates together. I'm really looking forward to it. So, I guess my advice to you is don't be afraid of change. Thanks for listening, and please subscribe to share my story.
Hey, my name is Delara, and I want to tell you how I got rid of my psychopath brother. He tyrannized my family for years, but now he's gone. And yes, I confess, I did it. I made him disappear. Since I can remember, I lived in constant fear of death. When my brother and I played together, he would always put plastic bags over my teddy bear, as if he was suffocating it. And then he would point at me and laugh like I would be next. My parents knew he was an evil monster, which is why they never left me alone with him in the same room. He loved drawing himself eating and crucifying other people. To make things worse, most of the time, I was the victim. So of course I was scared. I knew my brother wanted to turn his fantasies into reality, but luckily, I had my parents and my dog Tobias protecting me. My brother had tried several times to break into my room at night, but Tobias always slept next to me. He was a very big dog. Unfortunately, that didn't save him from my brother. One day, my brother ran after me, and I started screaming for help. Tobias immediately came to my rescue and jumped onto my brother, threw him down and snarled at him. But psychopaths like my brother are incapable of feeling fear. That's why he just grinned back at Tobias and said, "You will regret this badly." I knew it was my responsibility to protect Tobias from my brother, but I failed. My brother must have lured him outside and then Tobias was gone. I told my parents that my brother got rid of Tobias, but they didn't quite believe me. They said maybe Tobias just ran away. But the next day, when my parents and I came back from grocery shopping, my brother was in the kitchen cooking. He had never cooked before, and for some reason he was staring at me with his usual evil grin. Then he pulled out a big haunch and bit into it, while staring at me. The haunch was weirdly big. It took me a few seconds to realize that he was eating the leg of Tobias. In that moment, something switched inside me. I knew only one of us would survive. I was ready to die. I first told my parents what was going on, but when they took a closer look at the haunch, they said it wasn't Tobias. But I knew they were lying to make me feel comfortable. Because a few minutes later, my brother told me what he had done to Tobias, how he had cooked him, and that he tasted like high-quality beef. Tobias wasn't just a dog for me. He was my best friend. And no one eats my best friend without equal retribution. My parents were scared of my brother, but I wasn't anymore. I knew if I didn't take action, I would end up like Tobias. To protect myself, my dad gave me pepper spray and told me to use it against my brother if he threatened me. He said the pepper spray was strong enough to keep off bears, so it would easily knock out my brother. But I had no interest in defending myself. I didn't want to live in fear anymore. So the next morning, I opened my brother's door and threw a heavy book at him and screamed, "You murderer!" He immediately got up and ran after me. I ran out of our house directly into the forest. My brother ran after me, but I had 2 advantages. I was 2 years older than him, and I had shoes on while he didn't. I was faster than him, but kept him close enough that he thought he could catch me. 1 mile, 2 miles, 3 miles. I had never run like this before. It was a beautiful and intense experience. At one point, I stopped and gasped for air. My brother was right there, 5 meters away. I could see in his face that he had waited for this moment all his life. But so did I. I pulled my dad's pepper spray out, ready to use it against my brother, and end this once and for all. My brother started running away from me, but I was faster than him, and about to catch up when I fell and he escaped. Now I was truly petrified. I wasn't sure what my brother would do next, so I ran to my parents and told them about my brother and how he had run after me in the forest. They knew I was telling the truth and decided my brother was too dangerous to continue to live with us. That's why they tried to put him into a special facility for violent and dangerous teenagers. But my brother had no criminal record, so they didn't accept him in. My parents' only choice left was giving him into a foster home, but they said he was too dangerous and a threat to the other kids there. That's why they decided to keep him living with us. Of course, we were all scared, and I was sleeping in my parents' bed from now on. I spent hours every night thinking how I could get rid of him. And then I had an idea. What if I placed a knife into his backpack and called the police to tell them he was planning to attack someone? But I knew he would accuse me of setting him up. So I also put a few of his drawings into his backpack. Then, during school, I called the police and told them my brother had told me he wanted to go psycho on his classmates. The police immediately arrived and took him into custody. And guess what? Now he is in a youth detention facility, and he will stay there for many years. However, his new home is only 40 miles away from where we live, and I'm scared that he will break out of there and come to get me. Because he has repeatedly sworn to take revenge on me, because he knows that I had set him up. That's why I'm practicing sprinting and fighting every day. I always carry some weapon with me, just in case. My parents have also installed an alarm system to our house in case my brother tries to